Tools, wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky. FPK, Future Proof Knowledge Podcast.
Future Proof Knowledge Podcast is back, episode 5, and I'm back. Mills, you're not taking this seat. See, he's just upped and disappeared because he thinks that I'm here to take over and he's trying to run away from it. Anyway, it's great to see everybody, and I hope you've all had a fantastic week. We are joined by the team, Tana Lara, Lisa Fannin, Olive Hickmott, and the wannabe host, Jay Sean Mills. It's great to see you guys. So, yeah, you did a pretty good job last week. I have to admit, I was very impressed. I was unable to join, but I was able to listen in to about half of it. And then while I was editing the podcast the following day, I was like, damn, they did very, very well. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit worried that you might not let me back on today. But yeah, Fraser, I thought brought some really good insights, and you guys kind of bounced off him pretty well. He's a great guy, Fraser. And yeah, I thought some of the stories that you guys brought to the episode made it a lot more, I suppose, real and realistic. And that's what hopefully we're going to continue today, folks. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into, I suppose, in a simple way, positive reinforcement. And what positive reinforcement has meant to us as children when we were kids, long time ago, to be in people who are working with young people or have children and stuff like that, and how we've used positive reinforcement, or maybe how we could have used it a little bit better than we actually have in the past. So it's going to be a fun one, and we're going to throw some curveballs in at you. But Tana, I'm going to come to you first. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you know what? I think I was complimenting Lisa on her kind of background there, and it looks nice and log cabiny. But I have to admit, your background is my favorite, because whatever that is behind you is pretty cool. No, the other side. That's cool too. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're rearranging. I'm redoing and putting up new stuff, and I'm going through old stuff and deciding what I want to put up.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head already, but then I'm not one for knowing those things. What does positive reinforcement mean to you, Tana?
Support.
Okay.
Positive reinforcement means support. Always being there when the going gets tough, no matter what. Always having to be there for your children, or just period.
Just in general, yeah. So definitely for your kids.
Just always being there. Like I said, when the going gets tough, you can rely on somebody through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Having somebody there, having your back, knowing that when you're not in the room, that you know how they say, somebody is your real friend when you leave the room and they have your back, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's that, and just always being there when you need them.
I like that.
Yeah. Have you never heard that?
No, I've never heard that one.
Really?
Yeah. So, I wonder what you guys would all say if I left the room. Maybe let's not get into that. Thanks, Tana. Lisa, what about you? Like, what does positive reinforcement shout to you when you hear it?
To me, it says acknowledging and validating when you are working through a challenge. So you're doing something really hard, whether you're taking on, a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K, and it's your first one, and you're like at mile 5 or, the 7th kilometer, you're like, I can't finish this. It's that we see you, You're doing awesome. You can do this. Keep going.
That's so well put. And I think, and I suppose we'll come to this a little bit later on. Myself and Olive were having a chat before we went live, and I was highlighting the importance of authenticity. I think you've hit that nail on that head. It's not about false praise where a child or even an adult can go, yeah, but they have to say that because they're my parent. It is about being able to back it up with something real and tangible. And Jayshawn, I want to come to you next because I want to. No, I was going to say I want to save Olive till last, but I didn't mean that you're just a filler. Okay, that's all I'm saying. We're not going to fall out today, Jayshawn. So, what's your experience of positive reinforcement or lack of positive reinforcement, maybe?
When I hear positive reinforcement, I think of parent-child manipulation in the simplest form. Um, I'll say this every show probably because it's always a point that it's the point from where I think of. I have a 12-year-old son with autism. He's nonverbal. He's amazing with technology and devices, tablets, phones. So he's just started school this week. Yesterday, he came home from school. During the day, I wanted to clean up his room. I was like, no, I'm not touching it. Like he made the mess, I'm not doing it. So he comes home, he wants his phone so he can have fun. And it's no, you can't have your phone. Let's pick up your room. If you pick up your room, then you can have your phone. Parent child manipulation. That's what I think of when I hear positive reinforcement.
I think you need to write the new book on positive reinforcement. Do you know what? As a parenting specialist, as I've been called, not that I've self-proclaimed, I wouldn't call that manipulation. I'd call that boundary setting. So that's what we'll leave it at that. And Olive, I'm going to come to you next. Like, talk to me about positive reinforcement and give us your initial thoughts first, and then I want you to take us into one of the elements you wanted to discuss today, please.
I think on positive reinforcement, you have to be very, very specific. You can't say you're a great kid straight over the head in the bin. You've got to say something clever to that you can see what they're doing, and you praise that. Do you want me to tell you the Coke can story? Child comes home from school and dives in the fridge, gets out a bottle of Coke, starts drinking it, and then puts it on the counter and puts the stopper thing, back on, but doesn't screw it down. And Mum says, "Thank you very much for keeping the cap with the bottle so that we'll be able to use that." So the child then starts screwing the cap down, and so the mother says, "Thank you very much for screwing the cap on because the fizz will stay better." So then the child goes and puts it in the fridge, and the mum says, "Thank you very much for putting it in the fridge because then it'll be better for tomorrow." And at that, the child goes, "Oh God, I've had enough," and goes off to bed. But that's being very specific about what you're praising. You're not telling them they're a great kid. And those little things that you can praise them for, they might carry on and doing more things. That's my story.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I suppose if we're kind of going to start to take this a bit further into more of a developmental process, because like, okay, we talk a lot about working with young people and having children and all that kind of stuff, but positive reinforcement is just as important in adult life as well. And we can all have our moments where we're feeling a little bit shook. I'm going to hold my hands up. I had one today. Was feeling a little bit overwhelmed today with all the stuff that we have to do for FPK. And I got to sit down with somebody and have a conversation and did something I don't normally do. So I was kind of vulnerable and I said, "Oh, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed today." And she was able to just kind of reassure me and go, "You don't need to have all the answers." And it was amazing. The impact of her just saying that to me made me go, she's right. I don't need to have all the answers right now. So it's really important. But Olive, talk to us about the developmental levels, the 4 levels that you talk about a lot in your programs.
Yeah, the 4 levels of learning anything, basically. So I always use the example of a car because most people know about cars. So when you're born, you are unconsciously incompetent. You have no idea that one of these days you're going to want to learn to drive a car. Okay? You then move up when you're around 17, something like that, or before if you're pushing your boundaries, and go get into a car for the first time and realize there's all this stuff to do. And let's assume you're going out with a driving instructor and you come back and there's like, you think, yeah, I'm never going to get all this. There is so many bits and pieces, especially with manual cars. And so you are now consciously incompetent. You know how rubbish you are. Then if you get yourself a good driving instructor who's on your wavelength and can teach you in the way that works for you, you eventually get to taking your test, and you take your test, and at this point, please God, that you are consciously competent. But it's all a bit of a, I've got to do this thing and I've got to do that thing and I've got to remember to look in the mirror and do all that. And then wherever you're driving today, if you're a consistent driver, you probably have no idea what you've done in the car on the way to getting from A to B, because you're then unconsciously competent. And so if we can take our kids through that loop, the worst bit is when they get stuck in the middle. They get the driving instructor that's going to shout at them or something. I'm not saying driving instructors shout at them, but or you get the coach who's not really on your wavelength, or they're not telling you in a way that actually works for you. That's where you get stuck in the middle.
Yeah, and it's great you mentioned that, because in the past, when I've shown that process to people, sometimes the people I'm working with will say it's that first part, the unconscious incompetence, is probably the most difficult one. But if you think about it, it's actually not. You don't know that you can't do something, so you're kind of blissfully kind of unaware of it, or you kind of go, of course I could do that. Like Mona Lisa, do that in my sleep, no bother, having never picked up a brush in my life. Like, so that isn't the challenge. The challenge comes when, and I see it a lot with young people, where they might give up or want to give up, where, oh, I can't do that. So you gave the example of the car. I'd always give the example of learning to ride a bicycle. And the first time the child gets on it, and the parent takes the stabilizers off, and the child just boom falls over to the side. And that's the moment that the child can go, I can't do this, and I never will. Not only that, right, but sometimes you can get the parent going, oh my God, that thing is far too dangerous. My child's just fallen over and cut their knee. I'm never letting them do that again. Or maybe that's a bit, insincere. The child might fall on the bike and break their arm. So it is a serious injury. And that's when the parent goes, we are never doing that again. That's far too dangerous. And that can have the negative reinforcement, because the child has already got this belief of, ouch, that was really sore, I've broken my arm, I don't think I can do this. And then the parent reinforces that with, yeah, you're right, you can't do that, we are never doing that again because it's far too dangerous. So it's very, very important that, sorry, it's not very important, but if a parent or a teacher or an educator wants to, or Olive, we'll say this, a business owner wants to try and upskill and support their staff, is to start with the unconscious incompetence stage, which an employee probably doesn't have unless they're brand new, and then make a plan for how you can get them to the conscious competence stage step by step by step, which is so, as Tana said at the very start, so supportive. And it lets people know we have their back, which is really, really important.
My little grandson fell over the other day. He's only 9 months old, and he was doing his walk, coasting around the furniture, crashed, and then that could be the end of walking. But no, Dad rushed along and had a chat to him and stood him up again, and there you go.
But isn't it amazing the things that we won't stop them doing, like walking, learning to walk, like going to school, like tying their shoelaces, like wiping their behinds, like, so there's these things that we will absolutely persist with teaching them what to do and how to do it. But then there's other things that we'll jump in and go, oh, I brought them to gymnastics and they cried and didn't want to go. They hate gymnastics. I remember taking my eldest daughter to Gaelic football probably for 2 whole years. Now, she wouldn't be crying or anything like that, like, but she was just not bothered with it. But we took her, and then it was like after a couple of years, the light bulb flicked on, and she went, "I love it," and she played it for years afterwards, because we didn't just let her go, "I can't do that. I don't want to do it," and give up. And the positive elements that came out of that, with friends, her self-belief in her ability, the challenges she had to overcome, like busted ankles and injuries and stuff like that. But that's all part of life. It's really, really important for us to actually start to recognize that, challenges happen in life and we need to kind of step up and deal with it. Lisa, jump in there.
Sorry. No, so I have a story similar to this. So I was talking to my best friend's mom a couple of years ago, and she is just my best friend. Her name is Kate. She is one of those people who just goes out into the world and just like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do that. And she's very much kind of this fearless personality. And I was talking to her mom. She said, yeah, when Kate was little, we'd go to the playground and I'd watch her. And I was constantly telling her, Kate, stop. Kate, be careful. Kate, you can't climb to the top of that. Kate, no. And she said, at some point I heard myself and I thought, maybe what I'm saying isn't helping her. And so she stopped and she said, now I say, Kate, be aware of your surroundings. Look at your surroundings and be aware. Be aware of where you're safe. And she said, ever since then, all I tell her is be aware of your surroundings. She tells it to her as a 30-year-old mom now. Be aware of your surroundings. But that messaging also just influences how we perceive the world, how we learn to trust ourselves from a young age. It's interesting how just a small tweak can, who knows? Maybe she would have turned out exactly the same, regardless of whether her mom said no, 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 versus, hey, just be aware of what you're doing. She's still fearless. She still climbs to the top of a lot of things, But anyway, that's my story.
Yeah, and it is a subtle change or a subtle tweak. And I think it's not like, the reality is most parents, most educators, most employers, they're not horrible people. Like, they don't want their children or their employees or the students to be feeling bad about themselves. They don't want them to have low self-esteem. They're not thinking, right, let's just destroy this person. Some might, but I doubt the majority are like that. So, but it's not until we actually, like you said, Lisa, hear ourselves sometimes that we realize, like, I would have had a similar experience in terms of, I heard myself say no a lot. It was almost like the first thing out of my mouth with my youngest daughter at times. Just go, no. And even if it wasn't a no, it was just a no. And like that, it was like, oh, stop. just go, yeah. Or just go, maybe. and now maybes have turned into a yes. Apparently, she's cottoned on to me, but that's the way it is. Jay Sean, kind of give us your take on what Lisa's been saying there.
I right there with her. In my house, we used it. I mean, it was around potty training was our biggest positive reinforcement, and um, but that got expensive. So I'm sorry if I don't jump right onto it. So here we go. So potty training was the first extensive positive reinforcement situation we really got into. Um, and it was, if you go to the bathroom, you get a sticker or something like that. If you know you go pee, you get this. You go number 2, you get this. And the first week we started this, I went to the dollar store and I bought like these little gifts that were like $1.50, a couple bucks each. Um, then you realize how many times a kid goes to the bathroom during the day, and your positive reinforcement turns into like a $25 a day for him just to go potty. Um, but it was really important doing it and backing off on the cost of the positive reinforcement prizes for going potty was really effective. But at the same time, uh, prior to that, other situations were using no, and I kind of fell into the same thing you did, where it was always a no, 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 and it got to a point where it was like, wait a minute, let me stop and actually listen to figure out what I'm saying no about, and stopping to really give it some thought, which is hard sometimes because you're focused on adult stuff and then you get these constant questions. But when you stop and think about it, then it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's not a no. Maybe that's just a not right now. Give me 15 minutes, give me 20 minutes. And for my son, it's quite difficult in relaying that. So it's hard for me to relate to some of the stuff we talk about because I don't have that communication. So showing a child who's nonverbal, not now, is very difficult. With nonverbal neurodiverse children, it's typically a yes or no that they're going to learn. So the challenges, from my perspective, from what I've experienced, have been a little bit more challenging trying to express or explain that there is more than no or yes, and what it is to wait or what it maybe might be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So, like, I'm sure you've experienced that pretty much all through your son's life. So, what are some of the ways that you have tried that maybe have worked or maybe not worked to try and teach him that not now but later?
The simplest way for us, and we still, it's like our number one way of teaching them not now later, um, is I'll literally have to go grab a cell phone and plug it in and show him charging. Have to wait. What you're wanting is like the charging. You have to wait. It takes time. You know, you can't just plug it in and turn it on. So we plug this in, we set this down, and you have to walk away. I have to correlate everything to something he knows. And in his world, with devices being his thing, he knows that they need time to charge. So that's been the most powerful way. And again, that's just, as parents, we got to know what our children, what motivates them, what triggers them, and things of that nature, so that we know how to use those situations and how to apply positive reinforcement and communication without communication.
That's absolutely brilliant. And if you think about it, that's fundamentally what we're all trying to do anyway, where it is about trying to link something that is important or that they can understand, that they can, comprehend, to help them realize, okay, this is something for the future. And no matter what the learning is, whether it's a maths question where it's going to the bathroom, whatever it might be. But if we can tap into something that they are, that is within their frame of reference, we have a much better opportunity to show them that they can grow. It doesn't mean that they'll get it straight away either. Like many times I've kind of said to my kids, well, look, you've done this and you got to this level, or did this level of, we'll say, success in inverted commas in doing it. That doesn't, that means that you can probably do the exact same thing with this other thing that you think you might want to try. Olive, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention scaffolding because I love scaffolding, which is what you've been talking about, particularly relevant for small children, scaffolding onto what they know already. And one of the things I continuously talk about when we're teaching young children is things like starting to read nouns to start with, because they already know nouns. They're already using nouns to communicate with other people. And so that is scaffolding, and it's so much more powerful than if you start with something completely different. And one of the things when I very first started working with neurodiverse kids was to say, what are you good at? And I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but I'll say it again. The parents would think they were coming to see me because they wanted to talk about what they weren't good at, and I would spend my time to start with talking about what they were good at. And then firstly it would cheer them up. That was a big bonus, and they'd get them talking. I'd get them talking to me. And secondly, you could, when you look at what their strengths are, you could go, right, where else can we use those? That's scaffolding perfectly.
Yeah, I was putting together a program today for 11 and 12-year-olds to try and help them build their sense of confidence and stuff like that. And I've literally created an activity that is scaffolding, but I couldn't come up with a name for it. You've just given me my name. Thanks very much, Olive. I'm going to steal that. Sorry, I'm going to borrow that from you.
I've got a picture as well if you want one.
Absolutely. Tana, I'm going to jump over to you. So, like, for you as like an artist, but also in your work that you've done in cosmetology, like, you know, I could imagine you've had lots of experience of having to be patient in getting things to a level where you might feel under pressure from clients to go, right, look, I've got, you know, X amount of time, you got to get me sorted and get me out the door. And you're like, that's not how this works. Like, if we take that idea of scaffolding and put it into a real life working environment, talk to us about your process when you've been working with clients in the past.
Well, like, you're right. People usually think that, you know, they come in and they want something done, and I was like, that's just not realistic. You know, you want something done that's going to take multiple sessions. Sometimes, you know, they come in with processed hair that's dark, and they want to, you know, go out looking blonde, and I'm just like, that's not realistic. That's not going to happen. Not today.
What?
No.
I'm not.
No, they'll come out looking like you.
And they'd be lucky.
But no, you know, that's a lot of patience. But I wanted to say something about reinforcement, and it might go with something we were talking about last week. I had a story with my son and how being supportive with your child. And I know you asked me something totally different, and I'm jumping. But we have something here in Central Texas called Pee Wee Bowl. And, you know, it's football. And so, you know, they practiced and they, you know, they finally got, you know, the last two teams, and they lost. And I remember him coming off the football field, and, you know, when he finally got to me, you know, he held it, but, you know, he started crying. And he was so upset. And I was like, baby, it's fine. It's okay. And he was like, all that practice, all that time, all that, we played and we played and we lost. And I was like, it's okay. You're going to lose. And I said this last week, with sports, even though you practice and you can be the best and you are the best, you will lose. And this was the support I was talking about. Even though they lose, you have to teach them that you're going to lose sometimes. You can be the best and you're going to lose, but that's the support with emotional support and everything that we're talking about today. You have to be there for your children. You have to teach them that. That you're going to lose sometimes, even though as hard as you practice and you try. And with my son, we taught him that was going to happen. And my son, I think I said this last week too, that, he went into different sports, lots of different ones, but he stayed with tennis. And he kept going back to that and going back to that. And he's a pretty successful guy, but he does a lot of different little, activities or whatever. But just you constantly find those and you give your support to your child and they flourish on that. And you're always doing that with your children. And I think I even called him the other day and I was telling him how me and my mother were talking and saying, Alec, the fact that you flourished under everything that was against you, I just wanted to tell you how proud I am. And, he's 33 and he just was like, thank you, mother. So even as old as he is, giving that reinforcement still, it doesn't end. People, it doesn't end.
It doesn't end. And I think, like, in reality, we all need that bit of help and support at times because, like, my kids are pretty much grown up. All of your kids have definitely grown up. Lisa, yours are pretty much grown up. Tana, you're the same. Jay Sean, you're getting there. But like, there are still times where I go, oh my God, like, how am I a parent? Like, there's times where I'm going, my kids could have done a hell of a lot better than having me, like, because I don't know if I'm doing a good job, not. But that's okay, because in those moments, it's all right to have times where you're just unsure of yourself in any given moment. And if we look at it, it's because we're tired or things haven't gone the way we'd hope or we're feeling a bit under the weather, and that's just life. I think we're creating a society where there is a level of expectation that there can be perfection. And that's just not true. Like, if we think about perfection financially, well, you can always have one more euro or dollar or pound. If you think about perfection in, like, even the most beautiful people on the planet will look in the mirror and go, oh God, I look terrible today. I'm glad I don't have to worry about that. But like, I want to come to Olive, back to you, please, because you are perfect in every way. How have you maintained that sense of perfection, through all the years that you've been working? But no, apart from your perfection, like, has there been moments through your career where, like, even when you started to put together the Empowering Learning program and stuff like that, were you kind of going, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right? Or were you always quite confident that, yeah, this is actually going to hit the nail on the head?
Sorry, my brain is doing about 6 different somersaults at the moment.
It's your perfect brain, Olive.
Because I had the experience myself, and they say that a lot of people who have the experience themselves go on to trying to sort the world for the rest of the people, and that's exactly what I've done. So sometimes I get knocked over by people saying, oh, that's not right. I mean, somebody I know the other day phoned me up and said, I need more research because somebody's complained about my program, which isn't actually my program, but it's very similar. And so I helped her out with that, and it's now gone away, but it just knocked her for six to start with. I've had things that have knocked me for six, but I phone up one of my mates and go, "This has just happened to me," and they are always very reinforcing. Well, you've cracked it, Olive. You really don't have to jump down the rabbit hole that you've just been told about, and just don't worry about it. And uh, my only my bigger frustration is not of being knocked back, is that of not being able to get to enough kids before they develop real challenging behaviours because they're struggling in school. It's just not fair. And we know what to do now very, very clearly, and we know it'll be absolute magic for a huge proportion of the children of today who are incredible visual thinkers, and we need these visual thinkers on the planet to solve some of our really challenging problems on the planet. And could we please teach them in a way that really works for them? That's all I'm asking for. And we do know how to do that now. We even have a pedagogue and a curriculum exactly for teaching visual thinkers how to be visual learners for whatever they want to do. And we're starting really young because the rot sets in before you get to school.
Yeah, and I think when we look at trying to help that positive reinforcement, like I said, like you said, we're looking at aiming much younger, like from a very from toddlers essentially nearly. Um, I do like that idea of teaching young people that you don't and adults that you don't have to jump down the rabbit hole you've just been shown. So like if somebody says something to us like that, it's the exact same as the automatic negative thoughts that we'll have. Like, so not necessarily somebody else telling us about the rabbit hole. Sometimes our own brains will tell us about a rabbit hole.
Mm.
They're looking at you funny. They're definitely talking behind your back when Tana leaves the room. Definitely. Like, but then what happens is we jump down the rabbit hole and we swim around in it and we keep going further and further and further until something pulls us out or we just put the brakes on it. Jay Sean, talk to me about the rabbit holes. Like, so what rabbit holes have you been presented with that you've kind of fallen down recently that you kind of go, oh my God, I wish I had it just kind of had someone go, no, Jay Sean, you don't need to jump down that rabbit hole.
Oh man, that's a daily occurrence with different rabbit holes. It's a ant colony of rabbit holes where I'm at. But rather than telling the stories of the different rabbit holes I've been pulled in, I'll tell you who I wish I was like, so I didn't have to worry about the rabbit holes. My son. For
Wow.
all the things that are challenging about his diagnosis, the one thing that I admire and I wish I had is his total I don't give up a F. He's just like he's gonna do what he wants. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. If he's in public and he wants to roll on the ground and pick his nose, he doesn't care who's around, who's seen him, and what anybody's gonna say. If there's people pointing and laughing at him, he doesn't care. He's just about his own thing. He's totally, I don't want to say clueless because he sees it. I see that he understands what's going on and he picks up on it, but he doesn't have a care in the world. It's like the ignorance is bliss. Not saying he's ignorant, but there is no rabbit hole for him because for him, he's 100% confident in who he is. I wish I can have that neurodiversity within myself because it would help a lot. Because then I wouldn't be stuck in rabbit holes. I wouldn't care, oh, this person said this. Does that mean they think this? And if they think that, then I do this. And if I did this, um, did that affect this person? And I'm in my head and I'm laying in bed and I've gone down 5 different paths, like a choose your own adventure book, when there's only one adventure and I created multiple other paths that have nothing to do with the facts. So being able to watch my son and see the way he just doesn't care, it's I'm totally jealous of him. I'm totally jealous of him. I
Yeah,
wish I could have that.
I think
If
we
that
probably would
makes
all
sense.
echo that. And I just wonder, and Lisa, kind of, I'll come to you on this. Like, we work so hard to try and bring our children up and raise them to be, good, kind people. But I sometimes wonder about the society we bring our children up in. And is it not that there's right or wrong ways to do it, but is it right? Like, should we be, encourage our children to be more like Jason's son, who doesn't doesn't pay attention to what people say or comments or anything like that. It sounds like he's just present in any given moment most of the time, which is something that we will spend billions every year trying to go on retreats to get ourselves present and do programs to try and get ourselves present and read all the books to try and get ourselves present. And if you look at children, especially like young children as well, like they are just present. They, like, you plunk a baby in front of the mirror, they're just going to giggle and laugh. They're not sitting there going, Jesus, I'm putting a few pounds now. I need to lose that. Like,
Not
that's just not the
analyzing
way it
themselves.
is. Like, so are we making a massive mess of kind of bringing people up, do you think?
Oh man, well that's a big question there,
I
Al.
know.
No, no, but I will say, so listening to Jay Sean, and it's interesting because having 2 daughters, and those daughters are 6.5, almost 7 years apart, and completely different human beings in so many ways. So going back to my youngest daughter, who is also on the spectrum, similar to Jay Sean, and she's a 15-year-old girl. In so many ways is completely does not care what other people think in any way, shape, or form. You get to be 15, and I have a very girly 22-year-old as well. And my youngest, she just gets up, she puts whatever softball t-shirt of the day she wants to wear and her leggings on, and she goes off to school. She brushes her hair, she brushes her teeth, and she's gone. And I listen to her interact with my oldest, who's like, don't you want to wear like jeans, or what's popular at school now? Like, what are the kids wearing? And Emery's like, I don't know. I don't know. This is what I wear. And so it's like the world for her is just very black and white. It's just, I get up, like she doesn't put a lot of weight into the clothing. She doesn't wear makeup because she's not interested in putting makeup on. She'll put her hair back in a ponytail because sometimes when it's down, it's annoying. So I'll pull it back. But it is a very much simplified, like she does not get into drama at school. She has a small group of friends whom she's known for a very long time and she gets along well with. But in general, yeah, the way she looks at the world is different. And I've had this conversation with my oldest daughter. I'm like, oh, that is so freeing, because she's just living the world to her, to her standard, to what she wants, and does not really see or care about what's happening around her. And I think as a parent, sometimes I'll see the noise around her, like maybe other girls are looking at her a little bit differently, and I'm like, Mama Bear. But to her, it doesn't matter. She doesn't care. And I love that perception of the world, because it opens her up to get more involved in things that do matter to her. So she gets more focused on the things that she's excited about. Or like, I've been thinking about this for my next softball game and doing this to make myself faster, as opposed to like worrying about, are the girls going to think differently of me if I do 2 braids instead of 4? It's a different mindset. And my older daughter, she's just starting her career, so she's got her first job out of college, and there's so much going on for her because she is more aware of that. Like, I sit down in the room and no one gets up for lunch. Like, it's an open room that they work in once a week, and she's like, I'm hungry. It's 12 o'clock and it's lunchtime, and no one leaves their desk. So do I eat? Do I starve? And it's the pressure and the perception for her. It's such a different world. What do you think would happen if you just got your salad out and ate your salad? Well, but nobody else in the room is eating. Doesn't matter. So as mom, I can ask the questions, but it is interesting how gosh, yeah. I mean, young adults, even as adults, right? Like, we perceive there's always that noise of like, if I say this, what are people going to think? I wrote something in the chat here and it had 15 typos. I was like, sorry. Anyway, it's a tough question, Al. I didn't really answer it, but there's an example.
You mean you didn't answer the question of has society ruined children? Like, I'm really disappointed.
Just go to TikTok. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
Tana, I want to kind of jump in. Thanks for that, Lisa, to you, and ask you a kind of follow-on question. So this is probably going to be just as hard as the one Lisa got. But how do you think then? So if we take Jay, Sean, and Lisa's examples with their children, what do you think in society could cause challenges for them living their truth and living more in their everyday lives? And I know we could have, I could have asked both them, but I want to get your take on it.
Do I have to answer? Like,
yes, you do.
Can I change it? So, okay, let me get this. Ask it again. And how?
So, what are some of the challenges you think there could be for maybe an adult who doesn't care what anybody thinks, who doesn't conform to the societal norms? Like, what do you think might challenge them as they go through life?
I think a lot of our generation that's apparent in a lot of how the generation is. I mean, unfortunately, I think we're regressing, especially here in the States, but I think a lot of women working on the bridal circuit, like I did when I did hair, a lot of young couples, they were getting married, but they weren't having children, which I thought was a weird trend. So I think that I had a point.
Don't you love when that happens live on air? You have a point that just drops out of your head.
But the norms, I think it's good. I do think that that's a big I think it's really just like when we were talking about, I think on the third podcast about how with having different careers. I think that this younger generation changing things up, I think that's a big trend. I think it's good. Diversity is always welcomed, I think, from the way they learn. Is it?
Yeah. I wonder, is diversity always welcomed?
I think so. I hope so.
I think it should be. But I'm wondering,
anything else is boring. So I think from the way that they live, from the way that they learn, from the way that they do different things, just period, I think it definitely shows. So I think in our future that it's only going to help us. So I don't know. I think it was in our third podcast how we talked about how, and I think it was Lisa that brought it up. Children learned now that just because we were sold on how to work that you had to work 40 hours in order to make your life this, bountiful. Well, you don't have to do that. Why work all year to go on vacation for just 2 weeks? You don't have to do that. You can have a really successful and meaningful life, and you just have to work 20 hours and find something that, is more fulfilling that way. And I don't know, do something else. Anyway, no, I like that the younger generation is finding alternatives, learning different, doing different things, and finding their way. So
Yeah, I love that.
there's
And
my
I fully agree with you. I think like I remember there was a guy who was a friend of mine years ago. He was Swedish, I think. No, maybe he was Norwegian. And he was a chimney sweep. And what he did was he did chimney sweeping for 6 months of the year. And then he took the other 6 months of the year, saved up all his money, and then he went traveling, going to see live music, going to see some of the wonders of the world. And he did that year after year after year. And I remember sitting with him in a pub in New York about nearly 20 years ago and going, oh my God, like that is phenomenal. I think I had just like taken out a mortgage. I think maybe I'd just got like my first child, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I would love to be able to do that.
I
But
think maybe they ask for less too.
yeah,
They don't.
absolutely. Yeah, I
One
agree
thing
with you.
I told my children this, in our lifetime, like just, if you have the chance to live at least like a normal life would be like 80 years, because I always told them not to grow up too fast. 80 years, take a timeline. You have an 80-year life. Half of that is 40. Half of that is 20, and then half of 20 is 10. You have just this little time to be a child. Look at all this time that you have to be an adult. You have just this little bit of time to be a child. Don't waste it. Don't grow up too soon. Don't squander it, because you just have this little moment in this whole great big timeline to be a child. So don't do that. Don't grow up too soon. So that was that argument.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And Lisa, I'll come to you in one sec. But and I think that does though present challenges. And like so, for my friend, he was in a long-term relationship that ended up breaking up because he wouldn't settle down and he wouldn't have a child and get the mortgage and stuff like that. And his partner was like, I want, that's what I want. And he's like, well, no, that's not what I want. And I look at some of the young people now and I love it. Like I love seeing young people going, I'm only going to work 3 days a week or 4 days a week. But those young people, a lot of the time, will end up living at home with their parents until they're 28, 29, 30, which can be fine, but it can also be very challenging because when we live at home with our parents, there is still that hierarchy of this is my house, so you got to go by my rules, and then it delays uh, that maturation. And like you said, you see more couples now having children later and all the difficulties that come with that and having children later or trying to conceive later. So I'm not saying there's any right or wrong. I'm just saying it does present challenges. And Lisa, I'm going to come to you because you've been waiting patiently. Like, tell us your thoughts on this.
No, I was just going to say, and it's probably a little more relevant a couple of minutes ago, but I do think that our societal norms are shifting, um, in that, like even looking at my generation, like Generation X, right? You go to college, you get out, you get a job, you work really hard, you retire at a certain point, you get married, you have children, the whole yada. And I see that shifting for, as the younger generations are coming of age. Um, you are seeing a lot of, we're seeing a decline in people who are choosing to have kids. At one point, you were looked at as like something was wrong with you, or you weren't achieving all of your life goals if you chose not to have kids. Um, and now I think just as a society, the way that some of these things are viewed is changing. So you know what, if you want to be a chimney sweep and go off and then go, see the world in your off time, you can do that. You look at even during COVID, you had people who are like, I'm selling my house, I'm buying an RV, and I'm going to go, see the country. I'm going to go see the world. Even the concept of like the 9 to 5, for me, I went to an office. I can remember as a young parent, you know, leaving my kids with grandparents or daycare or whatever it might be, and going off to work and going off to my job. Now, years later, now they're older, and I'm like, oh, I can work from home. This is really convenient. I didn't have that option when they were younger, but just like with anything, technology, it all works together, and the way that we see the world is shifting. So I think it's interesting that I'll be curious to see. Obviously, we do see more people living at home with their parents longer, and obviously there are pros and cons to that. But I'm curious to see how this continues to transform over the years. What does an average workday look like? Are we going to ultimately look for more work-life balance? And can we still have a mortgage or have a comfortable home, have children if we want to have children, and accomplish the things that we want to accomplish? We're in a huge transition right now.
Tana, you want to jump in?
I want to say something.
Go on.
One thing Lisa said just now about things are changing, and how what you said too, Al, about the norms of changing when children are staying longer at home. Um, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with our children staying longer, or our parents, leaving or not coming back? Or what's wrong with multi-generational houses staying together? I know overseas that's not something that's not looked bad upon. And over here in the States, so many people put elderly or, in nursing or assisted living. Why? Why should we do that? I think it's more beneficial if it is multi-generational, and we do keep our parents with us in the later years, if we can, if that's something that can be accomplished and is. There's benefits in that as well. I mean, I know we're kind of definitely veering off topic, but there's benefits in that. And why, it's a family caring and the support. And it shows, my son with my mom and my dad, with him living here still, it definitely showed him a different part of them, and they had bonds and some, a little bit more later on. So I think that is a good thing, that is beneficial. And that was something that did happen later on, or that was something that did happen in the homes, and it was taken out. So
And I think
I just don't see.
Yeah, I think it's very much individual, isn't it? And I think this comes back to societal norms then again. So the societal norm is that we'll meet somebody, fall in love, have children. We'd definitely only be heterosexual because, there's no such thing as being gay or anything like that. Like, Jesus, right? But then we'll buy a house and we'll have children, and then we'll send them off to college, and then they'll leave, and then we'll retire. Right. And that is a societal norm. And I think it probably depends where we are in the world, but I think you're right. Like in certain parts of the world, and certainly in Europe, parts in Europe, there will be multi-generational families living together. Now, I know at 18, I couldn't wait to get out. And I'm pretty sure my 19-year-old can't wait to get out. And it's not that life isn't good and that, we don't love our families. It's just they want to go and explore the world, and I want to go and explore the world. Olive, I want to ask you, like, having kind of older children, were you kind of looking forward to having them go off and build their own lives, or did you want them to kind of hang around and kind of live with you?
I honestly would be happy with either. I'm sorry. What the most stressful I found was when they were at university, and there's three of them, and they're all doing university together, and they would go off to university, and then it would be, oh my God, it's very quiet, and then they'd all come back simultaneously, and it was like this happened for 2 years, sort of thing, and that was the most stressful bit. But I never worried about them going. I knew they would want to go, and I've got one in America and two in the UK, and as far as I'm concerned, they can always come back. And so I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you there, Alan.
Well, that is an answer. Yeah, either one is okay. And I think what you've kind of encapsulated beautifully is that there is always a middle ground. Things are never black and white. They're never just one way or the other, that there's always a space that we can come to. Jay Sean, I'm going to come to you for kind of a wrap up thought. And I've loved this conversation. I love where it's gone. And Tony, you're right. We went off the script, but that's the beauty of this. We can go off the script, and we should go off the script, and it takes us to very interesting spaces. So, Jay Sean, and I'll come to the rest of you folks as well. So have a think about what your wrap up thoughts are. But what's your kind of wrap up thoughts from this conversation?
So again, sticking with what I know best, my son, with how much I try positive reinforcement, the most successful positive reinforcement that any parent can do or any person could do for any individual they're trying to support is to be the person you want them to be, do the things you want them to do. If you want them to be a kind, polite, complimentative person, be that around them. Be the example of what you're teaching. You can't, it can't be the age old thing of do as I say, not as I do. So, in the positive reinforcement, if I want my child to keep his pants on around the house, well, I've got to keep my pants on around the house. He's got to see that example. When I'm out in the world with him, if I don't want him running down the aisles in the grocery store, I've got to show him, hey, look around. Do you see anybody else running? Do you see us running? Let's let's do us. So just being that example, not being a do as I say person. I think that's the most important thing. And that is harder than it sounds, because that means we have to stop and have self-reflection about ourselves and our actions and what we do. And at the end of the day, that's the hardest part of what we're talking about here, is controlling ourselves in order to display the behaviors, the actions that we want those that we're trying to support to also display.
Wow. That was a proper mic drop moment right there. Well said, Jay Sean. Tan, I'm going to come to you, and you're not allowed to say, I agree with what Jay Sean said. You have to come up with your own. So come on, tell me, what's your wrap up thoughts on today's conversation?
I know that's hard to follow. That was really good. All that we did for off, it's still about support. Mm-hmm. This was really good. It's still about support. Obviously love your kids. It starts really young, and it still goes until they leave the house, whether they come back or not. Always be there for your children. It starts, and I do agree with Jay Sean. You have to lead by example. Always lead by example. And no matter, they can fail, and be there with them at every fail that they have, because they will, and they'll come back, and you have to be there for them. You have to advocate for your child. You have to be their cheerleader, always. Always pick your child and be there when they need you.
Jesus, we're getting all the profound statements here today. Lisa, how are you going to follow that one up?
How do I follow those two? No. No, I would say, again, going back to the acknowledging, the validating, with anything, acknowledging what they're doing, validating what they're doing, asking questions. It's my favorite thing to do because I love to talk. How did that make you feel? How did doing that make you feel? What did you enjoy about it? And taking that focus away, like we kind of talked around earlier, of the outside perception of the world and getting caught up in associating success with how people perceive us. It's how did that make you feel to accomplish that? Did it feel good? I love that felt good for you. It's really about how you perceive it, and put your own positive spin on it. Yeah,
absolutely. And everything is about perception. Thanks, Lisa. And Olive, finally to you and your wrap-up thoughts on the conversation today.
I can't add anything to the three of them. It's like, I'm going to say something completely different. Sometimes you can be motivated not by somebody being really supportive, but by somebody giving you a challenge. I have in a school report from when I was 16, and this sentence drives me. It would be useful if Olive could learn to spell. I had been in the same school since I was 4, and I had no idea how to spell. Went to university, got a maths degree, eventually stumbled over how people spell who are struggling. And and that's what's driven me. That one sentence drove me to get, so that I will never give up, however old I am, that I still have work to do when I've got people who can't read and can't spell because they don't know, because we're not teaching them in a way that works for them.
Thanks very much. It's great now being in the host seat today. I don't have to answer that.
No. You don't get off that easy. You don't get off that easy.
Dodging all the questions.
So, same question, Alan. Back to you.
Whoa, I don't like the way there's
and you can't use my answer.
I don't like the way there's a paradigm shift here, so look, I think this has been a great conversation to have with you folks, because I think we've covered so many different areas that look at how each of us as parents, as educators, as human beings can live the way we would hope the world to be. And I think the more people could do that, the kinder the world will be to everybody. So there is space for a 12-year-old boy to roll around in the grass and pick his nose. There is space for a 15-year-old girl to just wear whatever she wants. There is, space for a late 40-year-old bald guy to sit in a chair and talk to fantastic people and not feel that he needs to be as intelligent as all of them, because sometimes that just doesn't play out that way, and that's okay. So I think it's about trying to create that space to know that we're not going to be brilliant at everything, but that doesn't mean we don't try to be as good as we can be. And on that note, you feckers, trying to put me in that position, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Future Proof Knowledge podcast. Next week, we will be joined, all going well, by the wonderful Vriti Sarif from the Ed3 DAO. And we'll be delving into how new technology can help learners from learning. And we're out.
FPK, Future Proof Knowledge Podcast. Mind unlocked. With every episode we cast, real talk, real tools, wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky.